NATO 3.0 may be doomed before it even begins, with China firing an early warning shot that the alliance's new blueprint risks destabilizing both Europe and Asia. After Putin's repeated threats over NATO's push, now Xi's camp is warning Europe against further expansion, signaling that two major powers see the alliance's next phase as a direct challenge. Beijing raised alarm as NATO eyes Asia-Pacific outreach, accusing the bloc of exporting its military footprint into China's backyard just as it tightens defense ties with Indo-Pacific partners. A leading Chinese think tank has warned against NATO expansion in the Asia-Pacific, arguing that the alliance's growing presence in the region could heighten great power rivalry. The Chinese report was released just days after the bloc formally discussed its NATO 3.0 strategy in Ankara, signaling concern in Beijing that the alliance's new roadmap includes a broader geographic reach. Notably, NATO 3.0 shifts greater responsibility for European defense away from the United States and towards European members, while also opening the door to deeper engagement with partners beyond the North Atlantic. The report criticized NATO's growing defense cooperation with Japan and South Korea, portraying these moves as steps toward an anti-China security framework on Asia's doorstep. Beijing has repeatedly accused Washington of trying to build an Asian version of NATO, and it sees the alliance's outreach in the Indo-Pacific as evidence that this project is underway. This comes as the IP4, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea have become regular guests at NATO summits, turning them into a standing Indo-Pacific partner group rather than occasional invitees. At the Ankara summit, NATO and the Indo-Pacific Four agreed to deepen defense, cyber and technology ties, formalizing cooperation that extends well beyond traditional Euro-Atlantic boundaries. Beijing warned that NATO's evolving strategy could undermine both European and global stability, arguing that opening new theaters of competition risks spreading confrontation rather than containing it. Notably, Xi Jinping's ally Vladimir Putin has also repeatedly slammed NATO's expansion, framing it as a direct threat to Russia and a key driver of conflict along Europe's eastern front. Russia-Europe tensions have further soared as a coalition of the willing, within the Western camp, has launched a new program to bolster defenses and support Ukraine. European nations move to strengthen a shared missile shield as Russia's ballistic missile attacks continue against Ukraine. NATO allies announced their biggest missile defense initiative in years to improve protection against future missile threats. Europe unveils a new missile defense coalition as governments seek to strengthen regional security amid the Ukraine war. As Europe expands its military capabilities, critics warn the continent risks sliding into a new Cold War-style confrontation. Ukraine and 9 European nations have launched a coalition to develop a shared ballistic missile shield aimed at strengthening Europe's collective air defense. The initiative was unveiled as President Volodymyr Zelensky met European leaders in Paris, according to a report by The Guardian. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, and 6 other European countries joined the new multinational defense initiative. Coalition members said Ukraine's battlefield experience in countering Russian missile attacks would form the foundation of the program. Leaders said the project aims to build an integrated missile defense network capable of deterring, detecting, and neutralizing ballistic missile threats. The initiative comes as Ukraine continues to face mounting pressure from increasingly frequent Russian ballistic missile and drone strikes.
This is an anti-ballistic system, and the Freya missile, which can become one of our joint significant contributions to protecting lives, strengthening Europe, and enhancing Europe's global capabilities to prevent conflicts. You all see the threat that ballistics currently poses in Russia's war against Ukraine. It is the ballistic strikes that have become Russia's last resort, truly its final means to prolong this bloody war. Similarly, we see in the Middle East and the Gulf how much sorrow can be brought by ballistic strikes when ballistics are used simultaneously with mass drone strikes. Ukraine has been defending against this for years, and literally every day we need. Right now in Europe, there are few options for such protection against ballistics. First and foremost, these are the American Patriot systems and the missile for them. France is developing its own updated system in this context. Together with Italy, there are also the IRIS-T systems, and we are grateful to Germany for the support with these systems. With the American systems, the difficulties are obvious. The production is currently, of course, being ramped up. There are not many of them. They are of high quality, but there are not many of them. And the President of America mentioned that in the coming years, this will significantly increase. However, America already needs to support the arsenals of its allies, protect itself, and protect its bases from strikes from Iran. And, of course, it's necessary to respond to what's happening in Europe in the war. Nevertheless, there are times in Ukraine when we don't have missiles to intercept ballistic missiles. That is a fact, and that is the truth. That's why we have started a new anti-ballistic program, which includes a coordination of political, governmental, and industrial dimensions, and which can provide mass anti-ballistic weapons, systems, and missiles to them. We named this program Freya. Today, the first founding meeting of the Anti-Ballistic Coalition took place. I thank you, friends, for your support. It is important that there are representatives of European companies, those who produce critical components for defense systems. Thank you for being present today. Each of us is important, very important details, very important components. In Ukraine, we have a missile, but these are only parts of a system. Together, within the next 12 months, we can make this missile, a system, preferably mass-produced, free, which will cover the shortage, be inexpensive, and at times allow the whole of Europe to equip itself with new anti-ballistic capabilities and provide protection to those in need worldwide.
Russia rejected the new project, with the Kremlin dismissing it as what it called a coalition of warmongers driven by confrontation. Economist Jeffrey Sachs also argued that the European Union should preserve constructive relations with both Russia and China. Speaking to Politica, Sachs said Europe's increasingly confrontational foreign policies were undermining its long-term economic and strategic interests. Jeffrey Sachs said, and I quote, "The European Union should also maintain relations with Russia and China instead of viewing these countries as implacable enemies. Russophobia in Europe is completely absurd, tragic, and potentially suicidal. EU subordinated its foreign policy to the US and renounced Russian energy resources at enormous cost to its own industry while engaging in a confrontation with China against its own economic interests." Unquote.
We also have detailed plans that we agreed here in Paris in January for a wider package of robust and legally binding security guarantees. And look, we all know that we've faced challenges over the last 2 years. But the fact is we have overcome them together. We stand behind Ukraine today stronger than ever. We have increased our military support. Last week in Ankara, we announced 70 billion euros of military assistance for this year and for next year too. And I'm really pleased to announce today that the UK will participate in the EU 90 billion euros Ukraine support loan. This agreement will ensure that Ukraine continues to receive the military capabilities it needs most. It creates a new route for Ukraine to procure capabilities from UK industry, including ammunition, air defence systems and long-range missiles. And it sends a very powerful message about European unity.